Welcome to another episode of the Built for Growth podcast. Today, I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Mark Sherwood. He is a functional medicine practitioner, a naturopathic doctor, and a 24-year veteran of the Tulsa Police Department. I thought that was kind of cool. We really dove into longevity. What does aging actually have to look like? And why are we so quick to assume and accept that a natural part of aging is that life sucks? I don't believe it. And neither does Dr. Mark. So we really dove into optimizing hormones, a little bit in peptides, a little bit of the things that we can do to feel better as we age, because we both agree that aging doesn't have to be this slow decline. As a matter of fact, I think that life should be great right up until the moment that we kick the bucket. So it's a really fun conversation, and I know you are going to absolutely love it. And as always, thank you so much for listening. So, well, welcome to Vegas. I hope the trip in was wonderful. Was it uneventful, hopefully?
Totally uneventful. On time,
Good.
but we did wake
That's
up at 2:00 a.m. to get here, so that was a little bit rough.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, thank you for making that sacrifice and being here. You look great. People won't see you, but your beautiful wife is tucked away in the corner over here, and I'm so excited. So on next week's episode, we will have her on, and I cannot wait to talk about all the things that she's going to talk about. But in the meantime, let's dive right into this. I want to talk about longevity, and that's a lot to unpack. I mean, I feel like we could just spend a whole podcast just on longevity, and I know you have so much more than that, but let's talk about anti-aging. We were just talking about my coach who passed away and how this podcast is kind of dedicated towards him. He was the inspiration for that, and him taking his own life, and that permanent solution to a temporary problem, and kind of just the mindset sometimes that goes with accepting things that probably could be changed. And I think when it comes to aging, depression, um, you've got to seek the right help, and you've got to fight the right answers. But they're out there. And that's what I'm trying to do on this podcast. And I think you are certainly a light among people that are really sharing what that is. And I also love how you combine a little bit of your faith into that. I think faith is a big part of healing. I think it's a big part of longevity. But aging, we don't have to do it the way most people do it. I hear all too often, it's just, don't get old. Like, the old timers tell you, don't get old. It sucks. Aging is terrible. Um, what's your rebuttal to that?
Man, I don't look at it like that, I realize America's expectation is
Mhm.
about 80 for females and about 75 for males, give or take. And I realize that probably, Miesha, we kinda go with our expectations, and expectations can become reality. But you gotta think different. And we're talking about, before we went on live, about thinking different,
Mhm.
with a different mindset. And I do believe, based on experience with, you mentioned faith, and, I'll say the Bible, 120 years was said by God himself, right? So that was an expectation if we believe in God and if we believe in the Bible. But you look at history, that tells us a big story. And the longest person that's ever lived was 122 in history. Oldest person alive right now is 118. And the oldest people alive right now live in the country of Japan. There's more supercentenarians, or plus 110 over there right now, than anywhere in the world. So that tells us a big story, that the expectation in America is far less than the possibilities. And I think we can do a lot better. With us, as I've got through life, man, I heard the same things, aging kind of sucks, it's going to be hard. But I haven't looked at that like that. I don't look at my calendar age. It's like guys in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. I'm like, wow, what the heck, man? But ultimately, it's about living better, trying to live younger, older, die as young, as old as possible, maybe extend the health span and perhaps shrink the sick span. And then I was telling my wife today, the greatest distractions we have in life right now, if you think about it, to living life, is death, disease, sickness, and lack. And if we can shift that mindset and focus on putting through life in the years rather than just living longer, every moment. Right now, I'm on the Miesha Tate podcast, and I know that. And You're going to get everything I've got right now because I need to live in this moment. And I think that's the key to actually experiencing true longevity.
That's really powerful. What brought you to that conclusion? Why do you think that giving the most in each moment or being present for each moment is the key to longevity?
I think probably personal tragedies, it makes you think about it. In my previous career before becoming a naturopathic doctor, I was a police officer. And, 10 years on the SWAT team, you see a lot of stuff. You see people, we're talking about suicide. You've seen people do that right in front of my very eyes, and you watch people that tragically have life altering decisions at that moment in time because they lost perspective about a bigger picture. And that can jade a person. It can create a person to be real cynical. But I had to make a decision through personal tragedies. Am I going to let this take away my life to make me bitter, or am I going to let it make me better? I'm not saying I enjoyed the tragedies. They hurt, man. They hurt bad. Life can sometimes throw you a curveball. It can sometimes knock you down, but you got to get back up again. And I think that's what I've always tried to do. And I think that builds a resiliency in you that you just can't explain. It's not if you get knocked down, it's planning to get back up again. So that becomes your new focus.
It's so good. I think that the mindset is so important. And I am a big believer in the body follows the mind. So you keep the mind sharp and the mind healthy and the mind well, and you exercise it like a muscle.
You do.
You've got to.
If you don't exercise the mind and keep thinking right, the mind is a interesting thing. You look at it from science standpoint, it's detached from the brain. So the brain is this organ system that's made of fat. But what is the mind? It's out there. And I've looked at it like this, Misha. It's almost like a funnel sticking out of your head with the open end of the funnel being the world. And you decide what you're going to fill your mind with. You decide what you're going to allow into your mind or what you don't. And sometimes the words you speak, the people you hang out with, what you expose yourself to, all will create these inputs into your mind. And that mind is full of perceptions, it's full of thoughts, beliefs, and those beliefs, perceptions, and thoughts go into your brain and they create chemical response. So you really can create physiological activity or you can create pathology by what you think sometimes. And it's been said that words create, and I really believe they do. Because if you always are saying, I'm never going to win, well, you're right. Or if you're saying, I'm always a winner, you're right. And that doesn't mean you won't suffer some defeats along the way, but it's talking about a larger battle, which is pretty much the war called life.
I love how you elaborated on the fact that how we perceive things and how we think, you can either tame the dog or you can let it be wild and you don't know what's going to happen. And I think that as we learn to tame the dog, which means to essentially the way that we interpret intrusive thoughts, the way we choose to be less reactionary and more kind of curious and or having conversations with ourselves in our own mind and say, well, instead of being upset that I feel this way, let's ask, why do I feel this way? Okay, so we start to
Mhm.
get the reaction out of there, right? We start to tame the dog, teach the dog that this is the behavior that we actually want, right? I think that that's so important. And when you said that it creates chemical reactions in the body, this is something that I love to highlight. And I've loved to think about this in a very expansive way. And I'll give you an example for me. If I am in a training camp and I've got a fight coming up, right? And there's a young woman somewhere, in this globe that has signed the dotted line who I know wants to take my head off.
Yep.
Okay. And I know that I've got to go out there and I've got to perform on a single night for 15 minutes or less. And really give it my all. And the whole world potentially is watching. So it's a lot of pressure. And you get these intrusive thoughts of, what if I lose? What if this? What if that? And all of a sudden, m- I have physical responses to these thoughts. I'll feel my stomach drop. My heart rate will elevate. Sometimes I'll begin to perspire. And it's all because I'm thinking about something. I haven't moved a muscle. I'm literally can be sitting calm as I was just having this conversation with you. I could be just totally calm. And then all of a sudden I start thinking these things and I can have physical responses. Those are chemical reactions going on because of a thought, not even because I'm doing physically anything different. And that's wild to me.
Well, you're really on to something that my wife and I, you mentioned she's here in the room. I like to refer to her as not my spare rib, but my prime rib. So
I
it's
love it.
whatever.
You called her your queen earlier. It
Queen,
was
yeah.
so great.
But ultimately, when we talk about the concept of stress, I think that this will blow people's mind. But if even the listeners right now and the viewers will embrace this idea, it will change your life. This is one thing that you can play over and over and over again, and I promise you it'll change your life. Stress has been misdefined, Miesha, in literature as a noun, and it never was. Stress is a verb. Let me explain that, just like you said, right? So we're driving down the road through the town of Las Vegas, and there's a traffic jam, and we're late to an appointment or something like that. Well, can you change the speed of those cars in front of you? You cannot. That is the stimulus or a stimuli that causes you to have to respond and make a decision about what you're going to do with that. You can hit your steering wheel, get angry, and yell a little bit. Or you can say, well, maybe this is some kind of divine delay and I'm supposed to just be quiet. Maybe I'm supposed to roll down the window, listen to some beautiful or feel some beautiful hot air in Las Vegas. Maybe. But ultimately, we have control. We have control over that. So stress then should have a new definition. It is an action you take or perception you make in regard to life's expected or unexpected occurrences. And if that's true, then all the physiological responses you just said are really under our control. So stress is something that we have a response to, and it's an action, so it's our decision. It doesn't control us. We control it. Those physiological responses you mentioned, we activate the cortisol side of things. Blood pressure does go up, perspiration goes up, muscle tension goes up, digestion goes down, and libido goes down. And these are by design,
And you can mobilize sugar into your muscles at that point too, right?
1000%. Because what happens is when digestion goes down and the cortisol comes up, cortisol is a glucocorticoid, glucose, right? Because we can't digest, we can't process anymore because the threat is outside of us. It's here. So we have to have an alternate source of glucose. So we start breaking down some protein. Think about losing muscle tissue right there. We start breaking down even some fats and we get some ketones going on. But we also get glucose created in our blood as well. You can become diabetic because you're stressed all the time. And when all that happens, it like takes away not just the joy of life, but it takes away the health of life as well. So we have to begin to reshape things and realize that stress, no, not a noun, it's always been a verb. And then we get the antithesis of the stress. We get this relaxation, which has the opposite effect. Muscle tension declines. We can relax. We can chill out. The heart rate goes down, blood pressure goes down, digestion then returns, and then libido goes back up again. So the desire to reproduce, because our genes have only changed 2% in 10,000 years, meaning the way we respond to everything is the same as it was 10,000 years ago when we're being chased by a lion or bear trying to eat us. So it's the
Mhm.
same thing.
Oh my gosh, just so many questions. But I have one about women because I feel like women I mean, men have a lot of stress too. But for whatever reason, I think that God may have given the ability for men to deal with stress a little bit better hormonally. I
Yeah.
see it, I think that it's bad for everybody, but female biology seems to take a harder hit. I believe
Mhm.
that's why 80% of all autoimmune diseases are in women, because our biology says otherwise. We're not supposed to be stressed all the time. I actually think that child rearing was supposed to be a really lovely and peaceful experience. And honestly, when you just rear your kids, when I'm present and I'm fully engaged with my children, it's amazing.
Mhm.
Even when they're fighting with each other and, you kinda wanna wring their necks, but, but again, it's like that deep breath, and it's remembering that I don't have to overreact. I don't have to be stressed about this situation. I could just, "Mm, kids fight. That's alright. Kids argue. It's a natural progression. It's okay. Like, I don't need to, have a huge stress response to this. I can mitigate that through breath work and calming myself down and getting curious about maybe why they're fighting." Anyways, I think that it's all the other things that make parenting hard.
Yeah.
It is the expectations of society today that we have to, have a certain quality of life, and, mom has to leave the home to work now, and, there's just so many added pressures to I think it was ideally meant to be a lot more simple, and a lot less distractions and a lot more availability to just be present and
Yeah.
just enjoy your children.
You you hit on some things that I'm pretty passionate about, obviously, and it's like, and you're right. Women are made different. Women have the incredible opportunity to birth children. I mean,
Oh, I'm so glad you said that opportunity because
it
too many
is
people say burden.
no, it's an opportunity. I
It's
mean, what
amazing.
a great gift you have as ladies to carry a seed into the next generation and legacy. Come on, that there's nothing bigger than that, and that's like overwhelming and will bring tears to your eyes. You think about the awesomeness of that.
Mhm.
But I've said it like this before, and this is not a slight to men. I am one, but I'm hard on men. I'll tell you right now, because men need to be men out there,
Mhm.
and
Thank you.
I'm having a hard time with men today, honestly, because they're not being men. A man is not a dominant force. A man is a servant heart that goes out there and provides and works hard so that perhaps the mother of his children, which is his spouse or whatever, significant other, can have the ability to be engaged and present in the home like that. I think that was the original design.
I think so.
They're still, the jobs are different, but they're the same and they complement each other. But men are like waffles. They do one thing at a time and they're able to separate that. Women are like spaghetti. Everything connects. You know, you can pick a piece of spaghetti up on one side of the plate and it's going to affect the other side of the plate. Men don't understand that. And it being the only guy in a medical practice for about 10 years, well, I became an expert in estrogen dominance and I began to understand that. But the point being, women's biology and physiology is different. And when you're carrying all that um, responsibility from an opportunity on you, and you got not just testosterone to be thinking about, you got estrogen, you got cortisol, you got progesterone, you got insulin going on, and all this stuff is happening. It is like it's like a 3D chess game played underwater. You're trying to figure out what's what, and it changes by the day. And I think that's something that back to my men need to understand better. And the key to understanding is realize you don't understand, and then don't try to fix it, because if you try to fix it, you're gonna get slapped.
Because you don't understand.
You can't get that. The best thing to do is be a listener, be there, be present, and then offer support by just your genuine compassion for the situation, and realize that, man, women have this incredible ability to nurture far beyond a dude. I mean, that's I raised 3 kids by myself for a long, long time, and I tried to nurture, but man, I frankly couldn't do that, you know? So, you're right about that, and it's not a bad thing, it's kind of a cool thing.
It's a very cool thing. But it comes with a high price. And I think the women are stuck paying this price a lot of the time because we are trying to do it all. And metabolically, it's expensive to be a woman. And we suffer when we aren't given or afforded the time. We don't make the time. We're just so busy serving others and the family and the husband and the job and all these things. And I think our hormones really take a massive, massive hit. What do
They
you think about that in longevity? And you mentioned the elevated cortisol, and you were kind of alluding, it seemed like to me, about the diminishing of muscle mass
mm,
when you have constant elevated cortisol. That was really interesting to me, and I think this is something that women struggle with in general, especially as we're aging. I think muscle is the longevity
yeah,
tissue. So am I sure this is important for men and for women,
mm,
but I think men can naturally get that muscle mass a little bit easier with the testosterone being available and present, where women might have to be a little bit more mindful and really cognizant about those stress levels so that
yeah.
the muscle that we do have and we work for, maybe we're not, letting our cortisol and stress work kind of against. Is that what you were saying? Or correct me or fill in the blanks, please.
You are right there because women about, at the age of about 35, give or take, sometimes early 30s, you're gonna start creeping into this perimenopausal window, and that means that your hormone production is gonna change. And whether you like it or not, that's gonna happen, and it's gonna climax at a point called menopause where your menstrual cycles stop. Now, men go through this too a little bit, but it's called andropause or sometimes we like to say manopause. But the bottom line is women will go off the cliff with
Yeah.
that. Now, what we've seen in testing, and you mentioned loss of muscle and aging and longevity, when a lady goes into menopause, lose hormone production, the immune system's viability plummets, and their actual immune system age or biological age, which we can measure, it might go 15 to 20 years above their chronological age in less than a year. And
What do
that's
you
not
mean by
okay.
above?
So
Like they get the basically the immune system ages?
correct. So the immune system is different. So, my calendar age is 61 right now. I can't believe that. But
I honestly you look amazing, so that's great.
well,
You honestly claim it with pride because people are gonna look at you and be like, 61, I never really understood, anybody wanting to lie about their age, to be honest, because when you look good and you're older, it is a badge of honor, so, I mean, wear it, that's amazing.
I suppose, I appreciate that. It's like, but what happens is we don't, calendar age or chronological age has really little to do with biological aging.
Right.
There's two different things. And what is a biological age? That means that you're aging at a younger pace. We've all been to those 20-year class reunions and you're like, had those comments, you're like, my God, they look old. Or, wow, they look great. Or they look better than they did. And you wonder what happened to those people. They must have had a hard life. We make those comments, or they must have been through a lot of stuff, a lot of issues, a lot of stressors, traumas. Um, but what happens is our immune system's ability to fight back is dependent upon, gets a little technical, but structures of glycans, which are on the outside of your main antibodies called immunoglobulin Gs or IgG. Those structures are changed, they're altered by hormone presence or not. So if the structures
Or
get
not.
brought
The
down,
key, isn't it? 'Cause
it
when
is,
you go through menopause.
and the structures start decaying, they start aging, they start getting broken down, almost like antennas that are communicating um, a cellular immune response, right? And they can't communicate anymore. So there becomes this issue of the immune system becoming less effective at its fighting battles. So we don't die from a lack of antibody production. We die of a lack of coordinated response and communication. So as we age and the hormones go down, because hormones are communication devices, they're chemical messengers, they're part of your endocrine system. It also impairs your communication system from your immune system as well.
Okay, hypothetically, or maybe scientifically, maybe there's some information out there on this. People being able to live to 120 years,
Mhm.
would their hormones be naturally more optimized in general? Like, have we tested those people? Do we know that? I'm assuming they're not probably on hormones, or maybe they are. I mean, but I feel like this is like a newer trend and newer kind of like understanding and really optimizing hormones, especially for women. I feel like that's really new. Like, thank goodness estrogen is no longer demonized.
Thank God.
Um, but that would beg to ask the question, and if that is possibly true, then I'm gonna double book you on a question here. Um, what is impacting our hormones, or like, are we being so, um, what's the word? The opposite of optimized with our environment. I mean, I think I've uncovered some of this in some podcasts before, but is it our environment that is making our hormones less than ideal, or is this just the part of aging that we just need to, um, somehow fix?
I would say it's the latter. I think our environment has created a catastrophic situation in which our bodies are in. Historically, people live longer. We forget that, and our genes haven't changed. So people are living along with the same genetic structures. So why did people live longer when they had less medicine, less modern healthcare? Why? We got to go back and be honest about that. Now, today, we don't look at the history of mankind because the history is something we've said uncovers the mystery. The better you know the past, it will help you understand the present and maybe help you predict the future, right? So people live longer, now they don't. There's a lot of reasons for that. And they have less hormones today than they did years ago. Studies have shown that, science has shown
Okay.
that. So we know hormones have not only chemical communication responsibilities so that our communication response around our body can work, right? But when we lose hormones, we begin to age faster. So the opportunity we have before us right now is to bring back those hormones at levels that are optimal. There is no reason that you have to become normal. Now, that ought to scare people when you go to your doctor and you get tested and they give you a call and you get told, make sure your labs are normal. Man, I would find a new doctor because that's not okay. Because the lab ranges we have today, on average, are taken from this population, which we've
It's a
already
sick
established.
population.
It's sick. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be in that process of sickness. So you have to set the bar differently. But there have been some significant things that have happened. The age of puberty has regressed 11 years in the last 100 years. So if that's true, then that's made menopause/andropause go backwards. And I'll submit this as a thought process for everybody listening. Is menopause a modern day phenomenon, or is it something that's always happened before? It's a modern day phenomenon because people were having babies later historically. History tells us that. Remember, the history does unravel the mystery. So why do we have this onset of women and men that are missing hormones? It's because of the regression of puberty, number one, and it's because of environmental cues, number two, chemicals in our environment. We've been told that statin drugs are necessary to prevent heart disease. Statin drugs lower cholesterol. Cholesterol is required for hormone formation. So water
Mm.
systems don't filter it out. So are we taking a bath in statin drugs? Probably. Chemicals put in our food and environment are known estrogenic compounds. So if you're putting estrogenic compounds every time you put it on us or in us through perfumes and, you know, toiletries and things like that and cleaners, you're taking away the testosterone functionability and pushing things down the estrogen pathway. So what you're seeing is a decrease in hormone production, a decrease in normalcy of that. And over the course of time, it shortened our lifespan. But more than that, it's shortened our health span. People today, that six span is increasing. And that makes me nauseous because we don't have to be like that. No one said that. You don't have to lose your mind. You don't have to lose your, you're going to decay. We're going to die. That's not the point. And I really believe that if we embrace the idea of what we can do today in this kind of movement, think about it differently. If we're alive 5 or 10 years from now, we're going to see more supercentenarians. I believe that because we're the breakneck speed at which the research is happening right now through, peptides and different testings and things like that, stem cells. It is fascinating on what we could achieve. Now, I'm not in this business to just make us live longer. I want people to know it's about living better. It's about living on purpose and making more of a difference. I'm in a part of my life right now where I want to give back. I really want to give back, and I want to leave a legacy behind that's communicating longer and louder than I could ever do.
I love that. I feel like that was a mic drop moment in there. That was great. Um, when it comes to hormones, I feel like there is still this negative kind of concern. There's still the idea, floating around that estrogen causes breast cancer. Could you go into different kinds of hormones, like ideal ways to optimize if you're going to use hormones? And I'd really love for you to touch on also how could we naturally optimize certain hormones, maybe both male and female? Are there ways to do that without supplementing and just like seeing if you could notice some optimizations naturally?
Yeah. I'll address the last question first because it's going to make good sense to people. When you get the foundations right, everything else has a chance to work. Foundations: nutrition, sleep, stress management, movement. Those 4 things right there. When I talk about nutrition, I'm talking about eating well. And if it's not in its natural packaging, the way it was constructed, it never was food. Food is either inflammation or information. It is health or it's sickness. It is death or life. And we decide that every day by what we allow into our body. When we open this mouth, we call it the mouth border, let stuff into our country or, our bodies. I think nutrition's key. It's not sexy. It doesn't sell tickets. It's not talked about, but we have to eat right. because we live on nutrients, not calories. The earth has everything in it still that is necessary for mankind's ability to thrive, not just survive. You just got to be able to search through all the mess and all the chaos and deception and find it because it's there. Moving more and sitting less is key. Movement is life. The only day you don't exercise is the day you're dead, the way I look at it. Every single day, do something. Our bodies are made more than you just sit down and have legs that hang over a chair, and the arms are made for more than just putting a piece of food into our mouth. They're made to do things. And I talked about stress or the management of that. Transition stress to a verb and accept that you have the opportunity to own it. And then finally, sleep. Sleep is something that we don't prioritize a lot. We should, because sleep is a time that we can recycle, rebuild, regenerate, repair, fight viruses, and we need to have it. The only time you can repair in the body and do all those things is when you're fasted and rested. How about that? So those things will ensure you have at least the opportunity to create the necessity of the hormones, which are primarily initiated in their formation in the mitochondria. The mitochondria, for those people, that's the organelles that drive the energy for the cell's operational capacity. And we believe the aging process begins at the mitochondrial level. So when we have mitochondrial dysfunction, the cells don't function. The cells then don't drive the systems in which they construct, right? With hormones themselves, there's a lot of thought out there that hormones cause cancer. But if that's true, then I would pose this question. Why don't every little boy and little girl upon reaching puberty have cancer?
Right. They're flooded with hormones.
That's right, because hormones cannot cause cancer. They don't. And then people say, well, hormones that you give cause cancer. If that's true, then why are they giving birth control to little girls like candy? When studies have shown synthetic progesterone, such as progestin and progestogen, do have risk factors for cancer. And they give it to little kids, but then once a lady gets out here to menopause, they say, don't take that because that'll cause cancer. You know what? They're right. And then they put those type of chemicals within our food supply. These are synthetic hormones. They're not really constructive.
So they're made in a laboratory. They don't exist in nature.
No, they don't. The best way to describe them is like they don't fit like the glove should. They don't fit in the receptors. Natural hormones fit in the receptors perfectly. And they're both made in a lab, but natural hormones are bioidentical. We want to refer to them as human identical, hit perfectly in the receptors, and they're formed from plants. So we have to take the
I always wanted to know that. Like, where do these come from?
Well, like yams and soy. I mean, we share DNA with plants and animals. I mean, there's a beautiful dog here in the lobby. We share DNA with the dog, man. That's kind of cool to think about. So if you can harness the ability of what is available for us in nature, kind of what I was talking about, it's amazing. And you bring those things back in there and you create their presence again at a level that is more youthful than younger. Because we've already talked about things that are drawing our hormones down. But now we have an opportunity to bring them back. So I look at it as a good thing. I don't look at it as a dangerous thing. I look at it as like, man, that's advancement. That's cool. That's awesome. Studies now show that we know so far that the longer you have hormones in your system at an optimal level, the longer and better you live. So we're talking about not just longer life, but higher quality of life. And we know quality of life does tend to have more association with better longevity. So long answer to a couple questions, but I hope that helped for people.
Yeah, no, I think that is very important to distinguish. So if you were to go to your doctor and you were curious about hormones, you get a panel done and they said you could benefit from this or that, could you request that you have bioidentical hormones? I mean, will a normal, medical MD or a doctor be able, or hormone specialist be able to prescribe either?
Not if you're working out of the insurance model. Because here's the thing. Now, I think everybody relates to this. Your insurance prices are going up. Not just your premiums, but also your deductibles. Not going to go down. That's just life. America is a system set up right now where profitability occurs with sickness, and that makes me very sad. So there's an expectation based upon an indoctrination of a population that believes that insurance is supposed to care about your health. But insurance is something that
And protect your health.
exactly, but it's not that's not trained to do that. And my wife, who you'll talk to soon, um, she'll tell you that. She was booted out of medical system because too many people got too well and her payer mix didn't match up. But that's the way it is. That's reality. And the only way for a doctor to really prescribe the bioidenticals is to get out of that system, right? And people say, well, you got to pay cash for that. Exactly. And I think that is the best thing ever because people now have skin in the game. Because if you're going to go out and buy season tickets to the Las Vegas Raiders and you bought season tickets, the money's came out of your pocket. You're going to go to that game. Whether you felt good or bad, you're going to go because you want your money's worth. If only people, Miesha, would embrace that idea with health and invest in that, the return on investment would be exponential. Not just in their lives, but in their families and probably in the world.
Right. And well, people spend the money with insurance and then they think, well, they have the same kind of thought. I'm gonna get my money's worth.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. But the problem is I've run into this personally. I know countless
Yeah.
people that run into this is that they don't get the answers they're searching for. So you'll get that call from your doctor that says, oh, you look normal. And you say, why do I still feel like shit?
Well, it's fascinating you say that because the question that we're asking the doctors in that system to answer is the wrong question. Because we go in there and we say, what's wrong with me? When you start looking for what's wrong in somebody, you're going to find it and you're going to keep looking until you find it. But why don't we ask a different question? Okay, this is not working well right now. I know what's working well. Teach me to make what's well work better. And then let's figure out maybe if what's working well, working better, can minimize what's not working as well. You see, it's a different paradigm, and we need to shift it like that. And the doctors in that system, and again, they're the most brilliant people we have on planet Earth. I want to compliment them, even in the system. But it's not their fault. They're limited with what they can do as per the guidelines in which they have to operate. So we're expecting something to happen from a system that was never designed or trained to do what we expect. And so you have to step away from that and then find someone, clinicians that will help you. And there's more and more and more out there. I mean, we've been beating this drum for 15 years. My wife about 20. And we were some of the first. And my wife has been called a witch doctor, which, whatever. I think it's interesting how people used to view that. But now people are starting to come around with what we were talking about 15 years ago, which I think is kind of cool. But hormones are not bad. They're good. They're necessary for life. We need to know that. But to expect the system to meet the need that we have is expecting like a car mechanic to be able to come over and repair the dishwasher in your house. Two different things. You got to find a master mechanic that knows how to work on this thing we call the body. My wife calls it a skin bag or a flesh suit. You better find a master mechanic because you don't have to feel, as you said, like shit in life. You don't have to do that. That's not necessary for the aging process.
So let me ask you this. Have you been able to naturally optimize your hormones? Do you take hormone replacement therapy? And maybe like, what does your diet and kind of workout regimen look like? If you could walk us through that.
Yeah, I do take hormones. I
Okay.
take testosterone, and I try to get my testosterone level up there to where it might be when I was 20. Now, do I know that? No, but can I see that through testing other people? Yes. I take a lot of peptides too, by the way. I think peptides are just outstanding with a safety profile near 100%. Now, I'm always watching for other things around my body. I check extensive, voluminous, comprehensive labs, which are different than what you're seeing. Some of the labs we check in conventional medicine are basically worthless. They don't do anything. They don't tell you anything. They don't tell you, are you on the way to disease process or not? They tell you, am I here or not? And there's two different questions. So I think that, getting places your hormones, peptides in the right position will help you. But with my life, I get up in the morning time about 4, usually 4:10, 4:15 in the morning. It's like, wow, that's early. But my pattern's the same. We talked about earlier the mindset, consistent patterns of mindset. And you know this from training all those years. If you master those fundamentals over and over and over and over again, that's how you build. And I've watched you in matches. You go back to those fundamentals, and it goes from that point in an upward manner. And everything you do is kind of adjunctive to that, right? So it's the fundamentals. So I get up about 4:10, 4:15, and I usually drink a bunch of water because I think that we can start off dehydrated. So I think drinking water is great. I love molecular hydrogen insertion into my water. I think that's a brilliant thing, and everybody should do that on planet Earth. We don't, but we should. And then I'll have usually a cup of coffee or two. And then I usually pray and get quiet for a while because that's how I start my day, man. I mean, some people call it meditation. I like to believe I sit and talk with God and say, "How's it going, dude? Man, good to help me this day." And then my wife is usually right behind me in that, and we spend a little time together talking and chatting. And then it's time to go exercise.
Can I ask you, do you put a little salt in your water to feel like
Yeah,
it's
I do sometimes. Yeah,
okay?
electrolytes are great. Little if you're going to use salt, Celtic sea salt or Himalayan. Probably Celtic's a little more of the premium there, I'd say.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I've heard that they have a lot of microplastics in it though.
It can,
Can
and so
okay.
I think.
And it's always that's the damn thing about all this stuff is
Oh, I
I
know.
always like the pros and the cons.
Yeah, you kind of just weigh out your objectives with that.
Yeah.
I think that you probably don't have to theoretically put salt in the water because you could take some minerals
Yeah.
if you needed to. And I do take mineral complex in
Okay.
the morning. I take a lot of supplements, I guess, as well. But I think the hydrogen, whether you
I feel
and
like that's gonna be the next big thing.
it should be.
Yeah, I've had Dr. Tyler LeBaron, who is
Oh, I know him. Yeah, good
yeah,
good guy.
yeah, I've had him on the podcast twice talking about molecular
Mhm.
hydrogen and what it does for the body and
Incredible.
yeah, how it basically you know, I can't say it the way that he does, but the inflammation of the body of can, facilitate moderate that, especially with injury and different things. There's all kinds of
Yep.
benefits. You have to go back and listen if you're interested
Yeah.
because he really is the man on the topic.
He's a brilliant guy. We went through a lot of his courses and stuff, and I've talked
Yes.
to him on the phone. He's
Yeah,
he's a good guy and knows
he
his
is.
stuff. People need to know that the hydrogen goes down to the mitochondrial level. It will penetrate every cell in the body, and it will selectively grab every excessive free radical that will cause death in you, and it turns it into water, which will give life to you immediately. And I don't know why everybody wouldn't want to do that.
Amen.
Straight up. So, but after my workout and working out, I don't go in there and I'm not in there to socialize, man. I don't care about talking to anybody. I usually listen to some calm, peaceful music while I exercise, believe it or not, because I'm thinking, God, I'm grateful that I can move and I can pick up stuff. And I do have a plan. I'm trying to, as my wife says, preserve capital, right? But I'm still trying to maintain strength and muscles because that creates mobility. Um, I do weight training probably 5 days a week and cardio stuff 7. I'm going to do something because I think that's important. Then I go to work and we do still see people, clients, and we are pretty much see people all around the country now, which is kind of cool.
What is your clinic?
Yeah, it's the Functional Medical Institute. We're based in Tulsa, but through the wonderful times like COVID, we're not able to reach out and touch more people. So that was good.
Okay.
So we see people, around the country and world, and then we typically work, 3 or 4 days a week right now. And then when I come home, or when I'm at work, I'll usually breathe about an hour of hydrogen gas while I'm working, and then I'll come home and we kind of biohacked our home. So I'll typically have a great, nutritious meal. I don't eat garbage. I won't eat garbage. If it's natural stuff, I will. I like fish. I like vegetables. I like salads. I will eat meat if it's good sourced, but the rest of the stuff, I won't do it. And then I usually get on the power plate. You jump in a little infrared sauna, and then maybe do a little cold plunge, and it's time for bed.
I love it. Sounds like a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Minus the cold plunge.
Now, I
Not
don't think
plunging,
it's
that's
neat. There's some good benefits to
oh
that.
my gosh. Well, I've done it before, but I think for me, And this is, it's individual. I also think for women, I think that there's better times of the month of the cycling
100%.
to do it and not to do it.
Yeah.
I believe when you're in your luteal phase, that second half of the cycle, that's less ideal. And this is individual too.
Yeah.
It depends on how you feel and your stress load and where you're at. But for me, it's just not favorable. I would much rather do that in my follicular phase because I feel like I've just got more to give in that phase.
You probably do, and I think a little tip we can give a lot of ladies in that area is you don't really have to go get an ice bath to get the benefit.
Right. It doesn't have to be as cold for it.
No, you could just do maybe 2 or 3 times a week, just, after a hot shower, just turn it down to cold and
Yeah.
dance around and hyperventilate for about a minute and a half, and you're probably good.
Yeah. It's just kind of getting that
Yeah,
stimulus, if
just a
you will.
shock, little shock.
Yeah. But I also, I've been recently, very recently diagnosed with Hashimoto's, and I wasn't aware of that for a very long time. I knew that I had hypothyroidism, but I kind of, oh, whatever, I'm fine. It doesn't really seem to affect me too much. Although I know that if I don't take the medication for a long time, I hate taking medication. So there are times when I will cycle off of it and just stop on my own accord for a while till I feel so bad that I'm just like, I'm not able to function with the brain capacity. It's like someone's turning off the lights in the building
Yep.
and I am, exhausted and this is frustrating and I feel like a shell of myself. So I'll start to take it again. Um, but now with being diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I've begun to understand a little bit more. And so my excuse in not doing the ice bath is I think we're more cold sensitive.
Yeah,
Is that
you
true?
are.
So it's
You are.
more it's so it's so incredibly stressful to me that I feel like the good doesn't always outweigh the bad
Big
of
time.
my experience, of my individual experience. And I know it's not always. And I have experienced ice baths where it's just the most amazing feeling afterwards. And you're just getting this high on life and you feel, fuzzy and warm. And it's I mean, it's just it's an eccentric experience.
Mm. Yeah, you mentioned Hashimoto's, one of my you mentioned autoimmune diseases. A lot of times, even with Hashimoto's, those 2 antibodies, the thyroglobulin and thyroperoxidase antibodies, when they elevate, and this is maybe an encouragement for you because I didn't know that, I've seen those antibodies go down. I've seen autoimmune conditions reverse themselves because one autoimmune condition is not one, but it's all. The system has developed what's called molecular mimicry, probably from a leaky gut. The leaky gut developed because of a lot of cortisol and stress over time. You're an athlete. I've never met an athlete one time that didn't have leaky gut.
And adrenal fatigue, most likely.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And so if you're not addressing that it doesn't need to be reactive. It needs to be proactive. Like for example, I take peptides in a proactive manner to prevent leakiness of the gut, knowing full well if I don't, I will have leaky gut. Knowing full well that leaky gut,
Even with as clean as you eat.
you bet you, 100%, because food today, although we eat and clean, that's good. It doesn't have the composition of nutrients anymore that it once had. So we've seen a nutrient depletion at the soil level, right? And if that's true, then you have the need again. It's a necessity to bring in things that augment. This is the proper use of supplementation, the proper use of testing. Like you need to look at micronutrient testing. What is at the cell level? I don't care what's going down the highway. I want to know what got delivered at the warehouse in that analogy. And then with Hashimoto's, are we plugging the gaps in the gut? And are we feeding the thyroid with the material that it can actually rehabilitate itself? Are we using a thyroid bioregulator behind the scenes? And are we taking a natural thyroid product versus synthetic? There's a big difference there. And when you start addressing the whole person like that, you can see things reverse themselves. And our bodies are healing machines if we give them the right information. Just let it do what it does. And it will absolutely do the amazing thing and restore itself. Because if we can get that idea right there in the world we live in with all the toxicity, it's amazing we're still having that conversation, but we're still here. What if we could turn around and let the body really maximize itself? What if we lived in a way that those organ systems were going to live 120 years? Because they're designed to be that. So why don't we begin to have that expectation and treat it as such? It'd make a big difference.
I think it would make a huge difference. And I have to hypothesize because I don't have blood work to prove, but I think what you're saying was applicable to me in the sense that I already believe I've begun to reverse my Hashimoto's
Mhm.
through better stress management,
Yes.
right? Learning skill sets to calm myself in stressful situations. So learning not to be reactive in those situations, but to be curious or calm or take a breath. You mentioned traffic, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
such a frustrating situation when you're late. And now I'm just like, well, I'm late. I guess I'll be late. I mean, what can I really do? I could sit here and stress. And isn't it somewhere in the Bible? Didn't Jesus say, worry doesn't add a moment to your life? I swear that's
Yeah.
somewhere in the Bible. I don't know if it's from Jesus or whatnot, but I'm like, that is a great point.
Yeah,
It doesn't change anything essentially. It doesn't make you, it won't, all it does is make you suffer in the circumstance that you're in regardless.
why do we worry about today when today has got enough troubles? We start worrying about tomorrow. It's not even
Here
here.
yet. It
You
doesn't
know,
even exist.
like, we've always kind of said this, but yesterday is history.
Yeah.
I may have acted like a bozo yesterday. I'm I realize that I'm one moment away from being a blessing or an idiot. I know I can do that, so I have to embrace the moment. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow, mystery. Don't know. But today is the present. And that's why today is the gift of the present. And we need to embrace today like that and really begin to. The blessing of today is a big one. And I think that goes a long ways toward putting our bodies in a position where it can restore itself and respond accordingly. And the stress management, the sleep, and all that stuff is outstanding.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm with you. And I'm a great sleeper. Historically, I have always been a really good sleeper. At least in my perception. And I've also tracked, like, for a while, I was tracking on the Oura Ring until it died. I need to get a new one, but I sleep well. Yeah,
Mm.
I get the crowns often.
Yeah.
The little crowns, like, you're doing a great job. You sleep well. I'm like, thanks. I know that. I feel great. I feel good when I sleep well. So I like sleeping well. I'm big on sleep hygiene. I get out in the mornings. I get the morning sunlight in my eyes. Um, and I sleep well. I don't have a busy mind at night typically. Every once in a while, I'll have that little bit where it's hard to, turn the brain off, and I do some breath work, and I've focused on, there's a word for it, but I kind of relax the muscles with each breath. What is it? Body scanning? Body scanning. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
With each breath, and I'm usually out. I'm like, that works for me.
It's good.
Um, but what I wanted to tell you about Hashimoto's, which was very interesting, is I really bet that if you had gone back and tested me at some points in my life when I was in a very toxic relationship, when I was really struggling to make weight for a fight, I was fighting for a world title. I almost didn't make weight because I did everything right,
Mm.
everything. I mean, over the top right. And I still couldn't drop the weight before the actual water dehydration part, so that made the water dehydration more excruciating. And it was just it was a horrible experience. I mean, it was horrible. My hands were cramping. I mean, my fingers were curled. I could barely function. I couldn't think right. My balance, equilibrium, everything. It was an awful experience. But I bet you if you had tested me around that time for the Hashimoto's antibodies,
Mhm.
they probably would have been much higher.
Yes.
And so I've only been tested once, and although I was positive, they were in the single digits.
No problem. You reverse those things. They probably have already started to reverse themselves. And this is what I'd say from Mark to Misha here would be like, from this point forward, I wouldn't even own that anymore. I wouldn't even identify yourself that. I'd say I'm walking around with a awesome functioning thyroid. Now, if you there's other things that thyroid function, of course, besides the decay that an antibody can do to the thyroid output. For example, we've all seen some more communication processes. A person that's 75, 80 years of age sitting in a house with a blanket on, the thermostat is 80 and they're cold. We've all seen that.
Yeah.
It's the thyroid. So sometimes glands don't produce as they could as the aging process goes on. And there's another opportunity. So if you have that happening, there are natural substances that you can bring back in that can restore the function of the thyroid and keep it younger, older, or younger functioning capacity. And it's not about treating Hashimoto's at that point. It's about optimization of the function of that gland so that our heart rate, body temperature, and metabolism would correspond with, again, good function.
What are those things?
I would use like selenium, iodine, glutathione. Those are key ones right there for that.
Yeah.
Amino acids, because we know the tyrosine, we talk about checking T4, T3. The 4 and the 3 respectively are iodine, and the T is a tyrosine. That's an amino acid. So you got to think amino acids, iodine, selenium to make the thyroid, again, stress management. And then at the same time, I would bring probably a thyroid bioregulating peptide, which actually goes down to the DNA of the thyroid and will make that young gland become younger. So there's a lot of things you can do at that point. And then obviously the right tests to give you the confidence to know what you're doing is working.
I like that. I am going to change the way that I talk about that to
Mm.
myself. Although I have tested positive for the antibodies, I do believe that I'm healing, and
Right.
I have the ability to have a well functioning thyroid. And you mentioned earlier I'm wearing a CGM, so I just put
Yeah.
this in yesterday, and it's been fascinating. I only have a little more than 24 hours worth of data, but it's really good. Although I think it's more volatile than I would like,
Yeah.
the spikes of insulin and whatnot, because I've never focused on that before, even as an athlete, and that's just never been something I've ever really thought about. And I think thank you, Dr. Josh Red, for just figuring these things out for me, for finally just giving me some answers or giving me some things that I can be aware of, because I think that now that I know that I could have a tendency to flare and have Hashimoto's, granted, I'm not managing things well, or I become, like a lot of other women for a momentary lapse. I try not to be like that, but I'm empathizing here that there are women out there who are just struggling to do it all, and it's hard. And I find myself in that sometimes too. Now I think that I have better abilities than I used to about how do I manage these overwhelming situations. Nothing really feels too overwhelming to me anymore. I can certainly get to points where I'm like, I'm feeling too overwhelmed. What can I do about this? Can I take 3 deep breaths and get out of my fight or flight position,
Oh.
right? Can I get my nervous system regulated? What can I do? Can I start with just one thing as
Mhm.
opposed to feeling like the 100 things that are in my mind right now? Can I just pick one and just get moving? Um, and these things have been incredibly helpful for me. But if I didn't have this information, if I didn't know that I could be prone to these flare ups, if I didn't know those things, I think knowledge is power. And so I'm very grateful to be on a program and working with Dr. Red, and he has a clinic up in Utah. It's amazing.
Mhm.
So I'm doing this protocol right now that's super super clean eating. It's
Yeah.
basically just eliminating all foods that could be potentially cause any kind of
Yeah.
flare.
Inflammatory.
Yeah, inflammatory,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So even for the next 3 weeks, there's no beef, that's interesting for me because I've never done no beef. I like red meat,
Mm.
but just with timing, no eggs. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have chickens. Like I eat eggs all the time. But I'm so curious, and I love doing things that give me information,
Yeah.
work or not work, which I do think that this is already, I'm already feeling better. Even I've been on the diet part for about 4 days. Um, and it feels good. And I know what clean eating feels like.
Mm.
I know what feels good. I'm not perfect though. I think you bless your heart. And I think it's easier for men. I don't know why. Call me biased. I think it's easier for men. I don't know why, but I think our hormones mess with us a little bit, and we get a little bit more in the way of
You're
cravings.
probably right.
I think a little bit.
With
I'm not
guys,
saying it's
man.
possible, but like, isn't it kind of like Groundhog's Day every day for you guys? I mean, it's like same 24-hour cycle. And like when our progesterone goes way up, and and our body kind of just craves more carbs and sugars, which
Yeah.
could be managed well and healthy. We definitely should be eating things that are, like more blueberries, or have some mangoes, or
Mhm.
things like whole heavy fruit,
Yeah.
things that's gonna satiate us. But it's difficult when you live in a world where, first of all, that information is not provided in easy. We're not taught this in school. Even doctors barely have to have any nutritional, because that's, again, goes back to the insurance model.
Mhm.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
You can't.
And you realize that the system isn't designed for health. It is designed to keep you on medication, keep you as a permanent client. It's not really meant to make you well so you can leave and not continue to funnel into the system.
Well, and guys, to your point, it probably is easier, because guys have more testosterone and more muscle mass. So what they do is going to have a more profound effect on body composition change per se. Yeah, having said that, I think we live in a world where, we need more guys to do that. I don't, sometimes I feel like a unicorn out here in a world where everybody else doesn't get it, right? But with ladies, there's a lot of things going on with the hormones, a lot of emotions going on.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a lady beautiful. It's not that it's that they're not a guy.
You're right.
I mean, that's
Thanks.
funny, but that's the way it is.
Yeah.
That's why, I
It's the
believe
yin
God
and the
made the
yang.
the lady for man because it wasn't good for man to be alone. And we gotta be like this together, and they complement each other. I mean, my wife can feel things, and she can sense things, and I've got no idea what's going on. And she just, "Well, I'm not just not feeling that." I'm like, "What's wrong with that?" And she's right. And I'm like, "How'd you know that?" "I don't know." But I've realized that it's easier for men to probably do that because and I think another angle with that is too that there's been such a stigma today with scale weight, especially for ladies. And it's more so today too with the GLP-1s that are out there as well. People are
Mhm.
focusing on losing weight. And I'm like, no, that's a bad goal. I focus on body composition. I want the percent body fat to be right.
I love that.
I don't care
I
what the
know. I
scale weight
told my
says.
mom, I was like, "Mom, please just throw your scale away," or like,
That
"Just stop."
scale is
Like,
a dangerous thing.
I know, because she'll always be like, "So happy, I lost 2 pounds." I'm like, "Mom, no,
No.
no." I mean, I want to be happy for you too. I'm not trying to take away your little victories, but they're not truly victories because the scale is not indicative of what's actually going on in your body. You may gain weight and go down in size.
Man, I had a lady come in the office, and this is a true story. This has probably been 10 years ago at least. Um, she was up front. We used to have a scale, up there. Used to, I said, key point, building up to the climax of this story. But she said, "Well, hi, Dr. Mark. How are you?" "Well, I'm doing great. How are you?" And she seemed like really upbeat and having a good day. I started walking down the hallway to my office, and I heard the same voice say these words: "Gosh, I'm so depressed now." And I thought, and I turned around, she was standing on the scale. And I realized something was wrong. So I took her back. We have a body composition machine. It's an InBody. There's a bunch of different types out there. Put her on that thing.
I have an in-body.
InBodies are great.
Yeah.
You got to do that, man. Her muscle tissue had went up 3 pounds. Her lean body mass or skeletal muscle. Her fat tissue had dropped 2 pounds. Net weight gain 1. Her percent body fat down 1.5%. Oh, nice.
About that. See if you can put that. Oh, it's upside down. There you go. Oh, your gut. They
Yeah.
barely fit on
Love
do
things that
this.
happen in
That's
real
all they're
life.
doing?
It's
Okay.
on there, yeah. So I let her get in the room where we do the rest of the stuff, and I reached down and grabbed the scale, walked it out through the lobby, and the staff at the front was like, "What are you doing?" And I took it to the dumpster and threw it away. We've never had a scale since. All we have is an
Good
in-body.
for you guys.
Not gonna do it because it's hurt people so much, and especially today, when the stigma of having the scale weight a certain pound, I mean, you get out in this part of the world, and it's hurt people, and they lose hair and they lose muscle tissue, but the scale weight goes down. That's not equating to health.
Yeah. Could you said hair, that's interesting. I feel like I've been losing more hair
Mhm.
recently, and I'm like now, maybe it's a little because I'm more blonde. I don't think so, though. I think that I don't know why, but I think
Mm.
my hair is getting thinner. I have very thick hair, so I'm not too worried about it yet, but I don't wanna continue the trend.
No.
And I thought maybe it was the Hashimoto's, because I know that you can. So it's like, well, maybe, cleaning this diet and everything like that. But I'm a generally healthy person. I don't eat perfectly. I'm not a saint, but I'm generally healthy. I buy organic foods. I grow some of my own foods.
Yeah.
I'm, but by most people's standards, I'm pretty good. And sometimes I'll go on really healthy stints, like
Yeah.
now, like
Yeah.
that's like what it's like absolutely nothing. And I love, oh, can I say this real quick? Total squirrel moment, something shiny here. But you said, something about junk food and it not being food. We stopped calling junk food.
I love that.
We
Good.
stopped using the word food for things that
It's
are
not.
are junk. I was like, "No, we're eliminating it's not food. You could eat styrofoam too,
You can.
but it's not food."
Yeah.
Right? I was like, "Cheetos are not food.
No.
They're garbage. Let's call it what it is." And, I try not to be it's a really delicate and interesting line psychologically to walk with your children.
Oh, man.
It's tough because they don't have full picture concept and they just see that it's here, it's on shelves. And like even most adults, we kind of assume that, well, if it's on the shelf, it must be okay, right? I mean, they wouldn't poison us, right?
Well, so this is an interesting topic because, you look at the foods that are subsidized by our own government. Corn, wheat, soy, dairy, sugar, beer. I could go on and on. It's the stuff that's made cheap because of subsidies, and frankly, it's ruined the farming industry.
I know.
And the farmers out there, you can't it's not their fault because now we're 2 legs deep in that through generations. They don't know any better. And, people like yourself growing food in the backyard with a nice seed, teaching your kids that this seed you put in the ground, something comes out that you can eat. I mean, that's amazing. And it is a delicate issue today because when you start talking about this stuff like this, you're talking about such a countercultural conversation because our health right now in this country, Miesha, is the worst it's been in the history of mankind's existence right now. Let's take a breath on that one for a moment. The Western influence on the world is creating unhealthiness in the world. And so we have got to turn this thing around rapidly because right now, the obesity rate in our country is above 50%. If we continue at this pace, we'll be at 100% by 2050. And you look at disease processes that we're having, cancer will pass heart disease as the number one killer of mankind in the next 10 years, I predict. Autism, how much of that is food related? I mean, I know we talk about vaccines and all that stuff. How much is food related? You're talking this 1 in about 30 people right now. At that pace, 1 in 2 by 2050. 40 years ago, 1 in 40,000. So we're in a kind of a precarious time right now. And making changes, I don't think is something we should really have an option for. It's something we should do. And you're right. You can't turn the big boat around, 100 degrees, but it's 1 degree at a time. It's one decision at a time. I love what you're talking about with, I guess, your children, right? That's beautiful because you're teaching them, at least with semantics in the way they speak, to be more accurate. And, instead of, acting like it's food it never was, what's going to happen is they're going to grow up and they're going to see a difference within their peers and friends. And that's going to be a great thing for them. So you're actually shifting their legacy.
Thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate that. I'm trying. I'm out there fighting the good
Yeah.
fight. It's not easy. Um, okay, we're wrapping up. Is there anything else that could be causing? Do you think hormonally anything like that? I think my progesterone is on the low side
Yeah.
according to the blood work as well. Does that have anything to do with hair? No.
It, it,
Or what
it,
else could?
the hair is probably going to be tied to estrogen
Okay.
changing. Could be some of the progesterone because the balance gets off, right? Thyroid is a biggie. Leaky gut is a big one
Okay.
because the leakiness of the gut will interfere with the assimilation of nutrients. A lot of times we don't assimilate B vitamins like biotin is B7. We don't get enough of that, which is very important for the hair. One of the things that we like to use is a peptide that we kind of call Kingdom Hair. We put it together. It's BPC 157 and GHK copper. It's in a foam, and you put it on your hair at night, and it reinvigorates the hair growth. So not only do you get some new growth, but you get the stoppage of the hair loss. And then again, that's something people should be putting on their skin and hair for the rest of their days, as far as I'm concerned, because it's a no brainer. But those are some key things that people should be doing because I look at it like this: does a person have to have thinning hair? Do we have to have that? I suppose there's reasonable expectation as we age, things will get declined a little bit, but do we have to resign ourselves to that? I think the answer is no.
I love it. That's like the whole theme of the podcast here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't resign yourself to failure
Yes.
because that's like, in your world, going into a fight and already telling yourself there's no way you're going to win. That's not even a relevant thought, man.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter what happens in there. It matters what's happened before you got there.
Yeah.
Because what you did before prepares you for that battle that day. And you don't, you talk about growth and all that stuff, man. The wars are going to come, but they're not every day. But how do you prepare yourself for that? You work on those little habits every single day. And when the war comes, you'll be able to get back up if you get knocked down, or might not even get knocked down.
I love it. I think that's a great closing note. This is so good. It was beautiful. And I appreciate so much of your insight. And I cannot wait for the podcast. We're going to record tomorrow, but it'll be out next week with your wife. And we're going to talk a little bit about women's optimization, a little bit about women's health and dive into her story. And I think that's just going to be an amazing podcast. So
Yeah.
thank you both for being here. And I'm excited for next week. And
Yeah.
thank you again.
Thanks for having us. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you.